In 1620, while the Mayflower was in Provincetown, 18 of its men sailed in a small shallop, searching for a place to live. They came to present-day Eastham, where they were met by a group of Nauset. After a brief but violent encounter, the English left towards today's Plymouth. In 2020, we remember this first encounter. We explore its meanings for today and tomorrow. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sunset Series. My name is Joanna Hollick, and I'm the coordinator of the Sunset Series. I'm here today with Duncan Oliver, the chair of the Sail On By Day Committee with the Historical Society of Old Yarmouth. Welcome, Duncan.
Thank you.
Could you start by telling us a little bit about what the Historical Society of Old Yarmouth is and what Sail On By Day is?
Well, we're the Historical Society for Yarmouth and Dennis prior to 1793. Then Dennis became its own after that. We decided several years ago we should have a 2020 committee. And the reason for the 2020 committee was we're one of the have-nots. We don't have any pilgrims that were here prior to them going to Plymouth. And we didn't want everybody to act out and end up looking like the Beverly Hillbillies and not know anything, so we were going to educate the town. In the process of doing that, we learned some things. Maurices Relation pointed out that actually we almost had a connection. And then we went to who was the first pilgrim from the Mayflower to actually come to Yarmouth. So we've tried to tie it in and make our town as part of the 2020 celebration. We have a lot of hotels and motels and things like that, and knew we'd have guests, and so this is what we've been trying to do.
And it is my understanding that Yarmouth's story is very close chronologically with Eastham's story. Here in Eastham, we're focusing a lot on the first encounter that happened on December 8th in 1620, and I understand that December 8th is also an important date in your story.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's the only date in our story. After they left here, and we still have a question that I'm going to ask you sometime about whatever happened to those 18 arrows that they picked up. Never could find out what happened. After they left here, they were supposed to sail on to find another possible place or go on to Thievish Harbor, which is what they called Plymouth at the time. And about an hour after they left Eastham, they ran into a snow squall, and it obscured Barnstable Harbor, Bass Hole, and they sailed right on by. That's where the SOB comes from, without ever seeing it. And that probably didn't mean much, except two 19th century historians, both from Plymouth, who first really made big use of Maurices Relation, said had they found that, they probably would have stayed there, and Plymouth would have had its foundation or its plantation, not that end, they don't call it that anymore, in Yarmouth and Barnstable. So we said, well, let's celebrate that. And so it's going to be on December 8th, whether it's rain or shine, whether it's snow or not. It's going to be at Bass Hole. At first, we thought, gee, wouldn't it be nice if they sailed the shallop in? But weather's too much of a challenge. And so we still hope that Plymouth Plantation is going to bring the shallop down, and we will have it there so that we can see their replica. And we'll have some speakers and maybe one of their sailors and a chance for them to taste, people that come to taste some pilgrim beer and some other good things that the pilgrims had.
And I understand that you're trying to make this as historically authentic as possible.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Will that extend to dress and food as well?
The food will be totally authentic. Plymouth Plantation, we had already hired their food director to do our opening ceremony, which was supposed to be in April. We were going to have a dinner, and we were going to have her talk about all of that and also have hors d'oeuvres. Well, they didn't call them that. They called them pods or something. But we will have food that is what they cooked back then, what they would have had on the shallop, and also a taste of some aquavit and the beer. My son-in-law has brewed some of the beer, and he said, you know, if you run into problems, just take Bud Light and add water, and it probably will taste just about as bad. But we will have authentic things. People will be in costume, will read from Mort's Relation, and there will be a handout for each person.
And you've mentioned Mort's Relation several times now. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is and how that has helped you in the preparation for Sail On By Day?
Well, we've always believed in primary sources, and come to find out, a thing was written that was actually a day-by-day guide of all the way through until 1621, and it was primarily by Bradford and by Thomas, wouldn't you know, Winslow. It's called Mort's Relation because it was given to George Morton in England, and he was going to print it, and it got changed and ended up being Mort's Relation. Terrible name, because you never think of it as being the early pilgrim thing. In the 1800s, people didn't use it much, didn't really know about it, knew some of the writings. And then Henry Dexter and Dr. Young were the two early ones that said, hey, wait a minute, this is really something. This actually says what they did each day. And they talked about first encounter and all the others. So we've gone strictly by what they've said. And of course, both of them said, thank God they didn't come close to staying in Yarmouth. Cape Cod is an awful place. And so it gave us a chance to look at what people thought of Cape Cod in the 19th century. And you know, when one of the tour books calls it the world's most unattractive place, you can understand perhaps where they got some of their bias. We don't think so, but hey, we'll go with it.
How do you think that the colony would have been different if it had taken place in Yarmouth instead of in Plymouth?
There is no better place than Yarmouth, so it would have been best possible. And that's not Chamber of Commerce, that's personal. Indians were friendly. They probably wouldn't have waited until March to make themselves known. It might have been sooner. We had fresh water. We had a lot of things that were the same as at Patuxet, which is where they ended up. I don't know whether Squanto would have played as big a role being further down, but he wasn't one of Massasoit's favorites anyway. And I think Massasoit would have come into it a little bit later. It probably would have been Ayano, who was the local Kamaquid chief, who would have had a bigger role in history. Hopefully, the outcome would have been as good that we could have had a fine way to start our whole colony. And I would have hoped the Indian relations would have stayed better for a longer period of time.
Well, thank you so much, Duncan, for sharing all this information with us. If we're interested in learning more, is there a website or where can we go to learn more about Sail On By Day?
Well, our Historical Society has its own website, and we also have a Facebook page, and you can find them there. We also have an administrator who is working even though we're closed, technically closed. So you primarily online, or through the the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and it's really great to be here with you today.
Thank you, Joanna.
My name is Joanna Hollick. Thank you for watching today's episode of the Sunset Series. If you're interested in participating more actively in learning about local history, there are several sites and landmarks here in Eastham that you can visit. One such landmark is Indian Rock. Indian Rock is a 20-ton glacial boulder that was used by Native Americans for tool sharpening. The stone was likely used for sharpening bone items such as harpoon heads, fish hooks, and stone axes. Today, you can still see the markings these tools made in the stone. Also known as Sharpening Rock, this boulder was moved to the top of Skiff Hill near Hemingway Landing in 1965 due to shoreline retreat. You can still find the rock there today. From the parking lot at the end of Hemingway Road, it is a 1/10 of a mile walk uphill to the rock. And we encourage you to visit this historic landmark. Thank you.